So I'm just cleaning off the last of the little neck clams. So when you buy them in the grocery store, you want to make sure you bring them home and you really scrub them well. So these have been well washed. And the other thing, make sure none of these are cracked, because if they're cracked, you can't use them. You'd have to throw them out. So these are all cleaned, ready to go, and we're going to open them in a little pan. You got to have that noise. And with that, I'm going to add some thyme, some fresh thyme, and some parsley. Just going to throw that in. And a clove of garlic goes in. Cover the pan. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to cover the pan. I'm going to leave it a little bit ajar because I don't want to have to clean the stove if the whole thing goes over the top. So now I'm going to let that cook until those clams open. You can use any kind of seafood for this. You could use shrimp, you could use scallops, you could use calamari, and that's what I'm using today. Calamari or squid and sea scallops. So you want to dry them off. Usually I do this, you know, like a half hour ahead of time. And the same for the calamari. I know some of you are squirming already, but you know what? If you haven't eaten squid, you have missed out. And when you go to the Veneto, of course, there's so many wonderful seafood dishes, especially if you go to the Rialto fish market early in the morning. You see all the fishermen there with all of their different catches. So I'm cutting these in half because I'm cheap. You know, this is going to feed a lot more people if you cut them in half. For the squid, though, we want to cut that into rings. Now I can hear my pot boiling back there, so I've got to stop and go. Okay, some of them are starting to open. You can see right here, look. All that liquid is going to be flavor. Beautiful. Now all we have to do is let them cool a little bit until we can handle them. So let me finish the last of the calamari or the squid. And there is the last of the calamari. All right, now we need to shuck the clams. First of all, let me show you. You see all that juice? That came from the 1/4 cup of water that I added to these before we cook them. And then, of course, the clams exuded the juices within them themselves. So we want to save that. So I have some fish stock here that I made. And I'm going to add this clam juice right to it because when we make the risotto, we need to have about 4 cups of liquid. But this is going to be plenty mixed with the rest of the seafood. And every one of these opened, so I didn't have to throw out any clams that didn't open. Okay. See? Looks like a little tiny bit. Okay, now let's get the pan going to cook the rest of the seafood. And the first thing we're going to do is cook the scallops. Everything goes into one pan, but they cook at their own rate because they're different thicknesses. So I'm going to do the scallops first. And I cut up a whole pound of scallops. But for serving 4 people, you really only need about a half a pound. So I'm going to put a few more in. You got to take these out now. So I'm going to take them out and put them into just another pan because as I told you, each of these seafood cook differently. Now we already have the clams cooked, so we only have to cook the squid. Calamari are ready, so we're going to take those out. Put them in a pile in the same dish that we have our scallops in. And then we add our clams. And that's our trio of seafood that we're going to use to put with the risotto. So now we have to get the rice going. Now, to make the rice, we need to start with a little olive oil in the pan, or you could use butter. But the important thing is to use a heavy-duty pan. This is a cast iron pan. I'm not saying you have to have a cast iron pan, but the heaviest pan that you have is going to give you a better risotto because it's going to hold the heat in while the rice is cooking. So we have our oil, and we want to start with some onion first. So you want, 1 onion. This is more than I need, but I'm going to put, that is plenty. The important thing here is to soften the onion, but not to brown it. You don't want to brown it. Risotto pretty much stays white. So while the onions are cooking, I want to talk to you about the rice. This is arborio rice. This is the classic type of rice that's used to make risotto. 1 cup of arborio rice goes in, and then you get your trusty risotto spoon. Isn't this neat? This is really made for risotto because the grains can go in and out of the hole. So just a bit of wine goes in, I would say about 1/4 of a cup. So that's 1/4 of a cup. And you let that just cook off, stirring the rice. And it's smelling absolutely beautiful right now. You want about 4 cups of liquid, and it can be a combination of things. You can have fish stock. I've got some fish stock in here that I made ahead of time. You could just use canned fish stock if you didn't have your own. You can use clam juice. You can use chicken broth if you wanted to, but I wanted to stay with the seafood theme. So this has got the clam broth and it's got the fish stock. So we're going to add this a little bit at a time. So I would say maybe about, 1/4 of a cup goes in. And this is the secret to risotto, the stirring that goes on. And you allow every addition of the liquid that you add to be absorbed by the rice. So you have to have patience when you make risotto. Some lemon zest. So fresh lemon juice goes in. And now I'm going to turn that heat down and we add all of that seafood that we cooked. Goes in. And we combine this all together for this gorgeous seafood risotto.